Here we go.
Hey everyone, Mary and Amelia here. Welcome to Real Conversations with INFJs and INFPs. This is season 1, episode 3.
Merja is an INFJ and is the author and facilitator of the Integration Mentor Program, an MBTI certified practitioner and personality profiler, founder of the Sumiloff Academy of Human Integration and the INFx Project. She has written 2 best-selling courses, which are the which are the 4 People Within, which is an extension on Jungian work, and INFx Unveiled, INFx Deep Dive, and the INFx Mastermind, which all show INFJs and INFPs how to live a more authentic and productive life. Isn't that amazing? When she is not busy with work, which seems to be all the time, she is spending time with her partner, Peter, and their collection of beloved dogs and horses.
And Amelia here is an INFJ, and she's a mentor who helps people become free of their emotional abuse, the history of emotional abuse. With her work, clients finally move on from what's holding them back. She's a fully qualified, in fact, integration mentor program, and loves helping people transform themselves. When she's not working herself, she's looking after her own self-development, spending time in her garden. I'm still waiting for that zucchini, by the way. And she's reading, cooking, and walking her large dog. And that's a really nice little bridge into what we're talking about today, which is the importance of pets for INFJs and INFPs. So I think this is a very topical conversation for me right now as things are going, but you are also a dog owner, Amelia. So what should we talk about today?
So, first of all, Merja, why are pets important to INF types? There we go.
Well, a couple of reasons, of course. You and I were talking about there earlier on when you said, some people are closer to their pets than they are to their family, some INFs, and it's true. I think one of the reasons why pets are important to INF types is because there is a certain capacity that comes with the introverted intuitive feeling combination that speaks to expressing or wanting unconditional love. And a lot of the times I feel like pets can actually do that. There are very few conditions on their lives, especially dogs. Cats, of course, have their whole own agenda going on, which is all good. Love cats. But yeah, that's been something that I've observed with INFJs and INFPs, is that kind of wanting that connection that's not as conditioned as it is with an awful lot of people. And I think also, our pets tend to really just love us, just as we are, flawed and all. What do you think?
Just give us the food and we'll stick around, hopefully.
Yeah, and then WALK for dogs, which I can't say because the dogs are here and, they can't spell yet.
Nice, which is a good thing. For me, I feel like most INF types feel pretty misunderstood. They feel pretty alone, especially if they are unintegrated. And even integrated INF types can feel this way. And often talking about it can be challenging, or they don't have the words to talk about it, or they don't know what to say, or they don't know what's going on inside their mind and they can't do it. And they're such deep feelers that sometimes just having someone around or something around who wants to take a nap in the same room as you can feel quite special. It can feel quite like someone cares about you. So it's like validating the care. I think that's important. And one thing that I will do with my dog's named Naya. I love going hiking with her because as an introvert, I don't have to be talking and I don't have to be, worrying about what they're going to say. And I can just get into my head and walk in the trees and my dog can like sniff around and we can have a great time, and I have something with me, it's not just me, and we can enjoy the weather together, and she's
Yeah.
always ready to go with that. So that is one benefit I get from having my large dog.
Yeah. Would you say that that like with introverts, that it's nice to do stuff together but separately? Like it's nice to be in each other's presence without necessarily interacting directly.
So from what I'm hearing, that's essentially saying like sharing a similar experience without really experiencing it directly together.
And without necessarily extroverting about it, like not having to be in an extroverted frame of mind while still be able to do something and not do it alone. That's what I'm
Got
kind
it.
of thinking.
Yeah, because I was watching The Queen's Gambit on Netflix today, and I saw two characters were reading at the same time in a room, and I was like, that must be so nice. Like I would love to do that with someone.
Yeah.
So you're just like reading together, which to me would be quality. It counts as quality time because it's like we're enjoying this together, and this person's having a good time, and I'm having a good time.
Right.
So I would say that's definitely true. Yes.
Yeah. There's that, and like no need to do that, no need to be in a certain way. Something I've observed, we have 2 dogs, 2 horses, 2 ponies here, another 4 horses in Ireland, and another couple of other rescue animals that are in their forever homes, which is that I've had the privilege to be a part of their lives, even for a short period of time. But something that I've observed with them is that they have personalities just like people do. And of course, that's no news to INF types. Like this isn't something like, oh, duh, of course they do. But it's so interesting because we have a household full of introverts here. My partner and I are both introverts. All of his kids are introverts. 1 out of 2 dogs is an introvert. And then there's that one extrovert who's always like, into everything and very intense and, has to, check out how everything's going. And I wonder, do animals resemble their owners and vice versa, or are there aspects of ourselves that we're living? Maybe that little dog Sambo is now like, maybe he's bringing all of our extroverted parts that are not being expressed all together and just I don't know. But have you noticed like people resembling their pets or vice versa?
It's so interesting that you say this because people to me will absolutely resemble their pets. And it's also interesting that they will love characteristics about their pets that they often do themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this dog is so funny when they do this. It's like, well, is it because you want to do that secretly and that's just part of your personality, or because I love like Naya is super sweet when we're just like spending time together and we're like cuddling by the floor because she's not a big cuddler. But when she's out like sniffing for squirrels, because she's sometimes I think she's an extrovert who can get scared of other dogs, which is also an interesting point that animals can be more extroverted or introverted, because that's actually the time that I'm just like, this dog, she's going after all these things and I don't understand this. So yeah, what do you think?
Well, it's interesting because, without wanting to anthropomorphize this whole thing where we're putting human thoughts into animals' heads with, and treating them as if they're an extension of ourselves, because they are their own individual being. And sometimes a dog is just a dog and doesn't have these thoughts of, they're doing this for that reason or whatever, that we're interpreting their behavior in a way that's actually not. It's our interpretation as opposed to what they're actually doing. So their projection is this. their action is this, and our projection of what they're doing is something entirely different. Like, we talked about before that Sambo, who's now, he's turning 18 next. He has been killing snakes that come into the yard, and we're all like, oh, he's keeping us safe and it's all great. And I don't know if he's actually keeping us safe or if that's just his entertainment. I don't actually know. So why am I making these assumptions about what he's doing? Because all he does is he sees a snake, doesn't even kill it fully. So I have to go afterwards to unfortunately put that animal down, because I don't want them to be struggling and dying of a slow death. That's just the worst thing for me as an animal lover to but then you can't always, if the dogs are out in the yard, we can't stop the snakes from coming into the yard. So there's this whole thing. So I'm wondering, how much do we actually project onto our dogs that they are similar than we are, rather than just letting them be who they are? I'm wondering about that.
Yeah,
it's something that
sorry, go for it.
No, you go.
I took a dog training class over the summer, and one thing that the dog trainer said a couple of times is that people tend to turn animals, especially their animals, into people. So like you said, like we know their thoughts, we do this.
The whole anthropomorphism,
so then you create, like, you turn this dog into like a baby. You're like, oh, isn't it cute? Oh, isn't it? It's like, this is a dog. Like, what are you doing? Which, we all tend to do, especially as we're having, fewer and fewer babies, at least here in the US, especially and later in life. But that is an interesting thing that I especially see people doing with smaller dogs. Like, my dog's 95 pounds. I can't pick her up as, like, I've never been able, I got her at 50 pounds. I can't pick up a 50-pound squirrely dog and carry her down the stairs. But it's interesting for me to see people that I think also want that love and attention and get it from their dog as well. So there's another element to that as well.
And it's, most of our animals are rescues, and so you kind of look at the nature nurture. Some of them have Mastiff in them, which Mastiff is particularly relaxed or introverted style dog, unless they're being protective of or territorial. Some other, or Sambo has various different terriers in him, so he's very intense. He's like into hunting and what have you. So and so there is the aspect of the DNA, but then how much of it is the experiences that they had? And that, to me, is also the question to ask. Would a lot of INF types, because we have capacity to see beauty in flaws or see beauty in pain or accept pain at a whole different level than most other people do, are we much more likely to rescue animals? Are we much more likely to create the rescue organizations? Is there some beauty? Is there some beauty in brokenness that INF types in particular are attracted to? Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's actually a really interesting question. I have a different perspective. That about 3 or 4 years ago, I actually got chased and attacked by 2 dogs, and actually got bit by one and had to go to the hospital and get the rabies shot and all of that stuff. So I have the perspective of not really quite, because that was quite a traumatic experience for me. And even walking, after that experience, even walking by small dogs on leashes, I would still get nervous about it. So I have that influencing me with getting creatures to where I need to know that this dog doesn't have anything traumatic in its history.
Right.
And that isn't quite, it's not 100% guaranteed from a rescue animal. So I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question. What do you think about that question?
Thank you for sharing that, because I didn't actually, I remembered we talked about that before, but we haven't really talked about it in terms of what it means. Of course, it's terrifying. It's terrifying, and if I look at the nature, so I want to be really clear. I'm not a dog specialist by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a horse person. Horses are what I know, and there's a big difference between horses and dogs, because horses are prey animal, dogs are predator. Horses are, there's so many different things about horses that are different to anything else, that like more domesticated animals, cats, dogs, whatever. But what is really interesting is that, something that stood out to me when you were talking is that there is, like, my experience has with rescue animals has then been the exact opposite of yours, in that any rescue animal that I've taken, dogs in particular, when you take them in, they know when their luck has turned. Now, I'm generalizing, right? And so were you, if I may say that.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not always the same, because there are animals that are beyond any, like, they're so traumatized that they can't. And I think as humans, we should understand the responsibility that we're taking on when we are taking on any animal, but in particular a troubled animal like dogs, and some of the troubled horses that I've had, because I was always the person that I got the horses that couldn't be rehomed because they were so dangerous. And of course, eventually they'll turn out fine, but because you're giving them love, and you're giving them leadership, and you're giving them what they need in order to feel safe, which changes their thinking over time and their sense of safety and that kind of thing. But there can't be any illusions about the safety of animals. And it's true that I think more difficult dogs end up in the shelter. The more difficult horses end up in the shelter because people can't handle them. And it's tragic. But I see a lot of INF types who have rescue animals, a lot, especially greyhounds, that type of thing. And I just, that made me kind of ask that question or wonder about it, if there's a certain attraction to pain that we feel like we can do something about.
I think now that I've had some time to think about that question just in general, to me it makes sense, or I could see why a lot of INF types are attracted to rescuing creatures, because they, I feel like, understand the pain and the loss of feeling quite misunderstood, feeling alone, feeling maybe how they believe these animals are feeling, and then can also understand the importance of someone taking them in and wanting that unconditional love that maybe they never got as a child, or are wanting themselves, or don't know how to give themselves. So maybe they're using it as a reflection of what they want deep down.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I certainly have fallen into that category myself, in the past, because I have a track record. I've rescued 20 animals or something. So like a serial rescuer.
She can't stop. She can't stop.
I can. Incidentally, I can. And I've made a promise, because when it comes to rescuing, there's only so much, like, it's very noble, but you have to do it for the right reasons. You can't do it because you want to save everybody, because if you do that, then you will end up destitute yourself, because you're always just giving and giving and giving and giving, and whether it's people or it's animals, it's whatever. you can't, like, it's an unsustainable model of being, so you need to know why you're rescuing animals. And so I would like to think that I'm a lot more aware of my modus operandi these days on what I'm doing. And incidentally, I'm going over to Queensland in the next couple of days to have a look at a horse that it'll be a miracle if I don't buy her. Um, she is the granddaughter of one of our first rescue horses here. So I was able to track this rescue horse that we took in. I was able to track down who she was, where she was coming from, and I've been able to track down her progeny. So that's really exciting for me. I'm so excited about that.
I'm not a betting person, but based on the look on your eyes and your face when you were telling that, I would say it's probably going to happen.
I have a very good INTP friend of mine who knows me pretty well, and we were messaging about it, and she was like, because she had a similar situation. She had a horse actually be named after. So she took her 3 horse on her own. This woman, she was actually the Young Australian of the Year, I think, by National Geographic some years ago, some 4 or 5 years ago or something. Belinda is her name. And she rode the National Trail from Melbourne, so from south of Australia, to Cooktown, which is north of Australia. And Australia is a freaking continent, right? So she rode on horseback with 3 horses on her own all the way. It took her 6 months. And the name is the National Trail. The name was the trail. And so where she got to, I think 2 of those horses that she rode the trail, they were breeding race horses. And they were so inspired by her achievement that they named one of the horses National Trail, right? And National Trail did really well in racing, and horse racing is a whole different conversation that we're not going to get into today. But anyhow, and they said when National Trail retires, he's yours if you want him. They had said to Belinda, my friend. And when I was talking to Belinda about Ruby, because now she has National Trail, she was like, we both know let's not both pretend like this, we were never going to get these horses, like you're going up there to have a look at the horse without taking the trailer with you, as if that's going to stop you from buying the horse. So I feel like it's this whole, as an INFJ, there is a connection beyond Red. I mean, we had to put Red down last year. She was 29. And that was heartbreaking. But now having this opportunity to not relive that relationship, but to almost like continue, because I would have loved to have Red from her, from Red, because she was such an extraordinary horse. And now I will have that opportunity, not directly, but yeah, indirectly. So I don't know why I started on that particular rabbit hole, but
I think that was that excitement coming out.
Oh yeah, so the whole rescuing thing. Yeah, the whole rescuing thing. So if there is, you have to kind of, you have to make sure that you do also, like with horses, for example, if you keep just rescuing horses, they're expensive. Horses are not cheap to keep. So you need to feed them. You need to, look after them. Veterinary bills are massive, as you can imagine. So you want to make sure that, you're not just always left with, inverted commas, it's say horses that you can't do anything with. So if you enjoy horse riding, for example, the horse should be able to be rideable. And sometimes with the rescue animals, that's not the case. And I'm not saying that rescuing isn't important. It is important. Rescuing is important. And I feel like having rescued 8 out of my 11 horses, I'm counting the new one. I think I've done my share. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from what you're saying is there needs to be a balance to rescuing
There needs to be a balance. You need to know why you're doing it. And if you're okay doing it for the reasons that you discover, go for it and do it, but do it consciously so you don't end up in dangerous situations. And that's why, you know, in your situation where you were talking about these dogs were possibly mistreated or, you know, that attacked you, there's a possibility that the person, and I don't know, I'm just raising a flag to say, did this person really know what they were getting into? Did they really know what they were getting into when they got those dogs? So be conscious of all the decisions that you're making. So you take responsibility for the animals that you have, because you are responsible for them creating any damage to any person.
And that's a good point. That's a good point, because animals also are a great reflector of the stuff that you need to work on. So this is something that INF types have in common, is their ability to put others first. So it's a nice reminder that when you have an animal, although you love them quite dearly, you also need to remember to put yourself first, to keep that balance, that relationship balance there, because you can't give and give and give to someone and completely drain yourself. That's not healthy for either of you. That's right. And also, you know, grace for the animal. So if they are not happy, let's just say you rescue an animal and they're just riddled with anxiety, and you don't have the resources to pay for their anxiety medication or anti-anxiety medication, then what's the right thing to do? Or if we had these friends whom we are no longer friends with, and you'll find out why in a second, who held on to their dog. The dog had cancer, little dog, and really old, and the dog had lost his eyesight, had cancers, that the lesions were coming out of his sides. He was bleeding everywhere. He was deaf, he was blind, he was bumping into furniture, and they held on to him. And I can't. You can't do that to animals just because you can't deal with your emotions. You have to let them go. Like, if the animal can't survive without massive intervention and they are clearly in pain, you have to do the right thing. You have to extend grace to them, no matter how hard it is. And it is hard. It's so hard. Yep, that's a good point, Merja. How do you know when it's time to let go? And do you have a protocol for making that decision? Yeah, so I do, as you can imagine, having rescued so many animals, we have them forever. We are committed to, this is their forever home. They will die at home when it's time. And it's hard every time, and it's different every time. And it surprises me every time. What surprises me about it is that when the animal passes away, what surprises me is that the next day life continues. So it's like I get surprised by it every time when I feel like my world has just ended and it just keeps going. And so we do have a protocol, and we something that a cousin of mine said, who is an INFJ, it's time to let them go when they have more bad days than good. And I would add to that if the animal needs medication to stay awake and to stay with you, then at some point, like, you at that point know that without the medication they would not be well and they would be suffering. So you understand that they are on their final furlong, and you need to start making preparations. And the protocol for us is, first of all, that all animals are put to sleep at home. They don't travel to some clinics or anything like that. They're buried at home,
and they die in our arms. They will never die with strangers in a clinic. And it's the least we can do for them, because they don't know why we're not there. They're always looking for us, you know. And the protocol is that I discuss the symptoms of the animal and their situation with 4 or 5 trusted advisors to get a like an average opinion, professional opinion. So I have my vets here. I have a very dear friend of mine who is a veterinary surgeon and in the UK, and a couple of other vets in the US and in Europe. And I speak to them all and I just give them what the facts are. So I report to them and then they give me their opinion. And then based on that opinion, I'll take action. So I don't make any decisions alone about any of the animals, because there might be something that can be done on a short term. But when it gets to that point where it becomes clear that the animal, without medication or without specific massive intervention from our part, would not survive or wouldn't be comfortable, then we just set a date. We set the date for the vet to come out, and depending on if it's a horse or if it's a dog. With horses, we want to leave them with the herd, so that the herd understands that this horse has now passed away, because they also have a grieving process. And so with the dogs, we leave them over. So with the horses, have them be put down in the afternoon, and then the following morning have the burial to come. And sorry, excuse me for a moment. Thank you. So have the burial people come and do the burial, and that's the protocol with the horses. With the dogs, it's different because you can't leave them indoors, and it depends on the time of the year with the horses as well, because it does get really hot during the summer. So if that's the case, then there's going to be a whole different insect issue and all different kinds of things. But anyhow, and then with the dogs, we need to make sure that we have the burial sorted beforehand, so that we can just have the burial straight away after the procedure. What about you? Have you experienced this kind of loss, and like, what's your relationship with death or passing away or animals?
So growing up as a kid, we had 2 dogs. One of them passed away when I was I believe they all passed away, or they got to the point of passing away when I was in college. And at that point, I was so hyper-focused on school that, it's sad when, you're a kid and you grow up and a dog is kind of like your third sibling, and you play with them. It's sad when that's gone. The other 2 dogs that my parents had, they got when I was in high school, so I didn't spend that much time with them, and so I wasn't really affected when the second one passed.
Right.
I also have been observing my relationship with death as the COVID crisis continues to mount deaths, and
Yeah.
I seem to be pretty unattached to death, which is something I'm sure I can come off quite cold and uncaring sometimes when talking about death. And I believe it's rooted in my 10-year-old inner child who makes this black and white decision of things and just is wanting to move on. So that's something that I've been observing about myself recently and haven't quite spent a lot of time dissecting that, just a pattern I've noticed about myself. So
Yeah.
how that relates to animals is I can be quite cold with animals passing as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I want to just say, for everyone's benefit, like, we are clearly very, talking about this in very different ways, but there is no right or wrong way. It is what it is. We're just talking about how we are and where we are and who we are and all that kind of stuff. So this isn't a, you should be this, or like, I shouldn't cry on video. I'm going to fucking cry on video because I'm sad, and that's just how it's going to go. And you're going to be cold and aloof, about death, because that's where you are. And that's okay. Like, it's all okay. It is what it is. And until we can really appreciate ourselves for where we are and how we're doing and what we're doing, and in how, the most important thing always is that we can accept our starting point, so that we can then, if we do want something different, we can make that change. But so if anybody's feeling their little keyboard warrior fingers getting all warmed up to criticize how we're having this conversation in different ways, yeah, it's okay. It's totally okay to be exactly how you are, and it is what it is. I'm wondering, with that, do you have some kind of like final words you'd like to say to INF types that are owning pets or are thinking about getting pets, or anything like that you might want to, from your perspective as a dog owner INFJ, that and maybe even as a result of the conversation today, that you wanna share?
Yeah, I would just say do some research. I've seen people make quick decisions with getting a dog that they later regret. Like, I have a friend who adopted a dog and then she was like, oh, that wasn't the best decision. So it's like, observe your feelings for getting a dog or owning a dog, and is this all about you, or is this also wanting a beneficial relationship for the dog? And if you are not happy with your relationship with your dog, reach out to us and we can set you up with someone if you want to work with a mentor on that. Any relationship will bring up your own stuff. So it's just observing how it's going to come out. Yeah. And animals are great places to work on setting boundaries. My dog was one of the first person that I learned how to set boundaries with, because it's a pretty simple place to start. And for the death piece, when it's time for the animal to pass, or if you were triggered by our conversation just now with the death piece, remember that death is triggering. Yeah. And also remember that it's important to soothe yourself before you take action on that triggering. So figure out what you need with the triggering, rather than being upset and then telling me that I'm too cold with death, or not a nice
Right,
person, or
right.
not an INFJ, or
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah. And by the way, just for everyone's benefit, both Amelia and I have been professionally profiled. So if you don't think we're INFJs, then I'm sorry to tell you that unfortunately that's what we came out as. But no, but on a serious note, yeah, absolutely. And you know, and that whole triggering piece, in any case, we have to take responsibility of that, as we have to take responsibility of the damage that our animals might do when they're triggered in certain ways. You know, many a time I've seen, and I wish I wouldn't have seen, horses going through windscreens and everything because they couldn't handle the car being too close to them or whatever. And more often than not, it was the driver's fault, because in fact, usually in most countries, the person in charge of animals on the road has the right of way. So check out what the legalities of you having a specific animal are in your location, wherever you are around the world, and be really clear about what you're taking on. If you're taking on a horse or a goat or a dog or a cat or whatever, what's involved. Getting the animal is not nearly as expensive as keeping one. So I would, look into that as well. Of course, you'll always make ends meet, if you want to. And I know a lot of INF types who have rescued animals or taken on animals, and because of the animals, they are making a certain amount of money because they have to make it. So there are people who have used it use animals to aspire themselves to create more income or whatever that is. But again, know why you're getting the animal. Do it consciously. That would be my kind of final little golden nugget there. What's your main takeaway from today's session, Amelia? I'm really interested, just personally.
That was funny. I was going to ask you that question, because that's not just to let everyone know, that's not in our list of questions here. I think my main takeaway for the listener is to realize that not everything that we talk about and not everything we bring up are things that we necessarily know each other, although Mary and I have been working for over 3 years now. So I think it's also interesting to see how we react when we hear new pieces of information, because I don't think I've told you before about me being attacked by that dog, because I think that was right before we started working together, or maybe I did at the beginning. I don't recall.
I think you mentioned it in the beginning, but we didn't go into it in detail.
Yeah. So it's for me, that was an interesting part for the listener, just because they don't really know what we know about each other. And to see how people can react in a calm way, in a supportive, calm way with that. My personal takeaway is that grief can show up differently with different people in your life. I thought that was an interesting perspective, because I've lost a couple people that I really cared about, but otherwise I haven't lost like a lot of people. So I don't have a lot of experience with deep grief.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, just you talking about that now makes me reflect back to last year when we lost 4. We had 4 losses last year in 1 year, and just keep thinking, what are the circumstances in which that happens? And certainly coronavirus would be one of those circumstances, war, those kinds of things. So it's just highlighted, just that last bit you said, because I was gonna go, oh, it's this or it's that. My main takeaway is this, but actually that is my main takeaway, which is it's not normal to experience so much loss, but also that when it happens, and it will, to try and be as prepared to deal with it as you can from your own integration perspective. I don't think, because I rewrote the 4 people within course this year. I rewrote it from like 4 years ago or something. I rewrote it this year. And I don't know, had I not gone through those 4 deaths last year and the bushfires and everything, that I could have done as thorough a job of it that I ended up doing. So there's a lot that comes from death that is painful, but there's also a lot of insight and a lot of self care and empathy that has to come with it. So try to be as prepared as you can, try to be as integrated as you can, so when you do lose somebody, and most of us will, that we can meet that experience with as much compassion for ourselves as we possibly can. Because experiencing or existing in those two different camps, the camp of the grief and the loss, and the camp that doesn't recognize the grief, your grief or your loss as the main thing, which is the rest of the world, you somehow have to coexist in those two places at the same time. And that's why I was saying earlier, it surprises me every time that world still keeps going, even though I'm in this. I've just lost everything. So yeah, that is my main takeaway from today. Short answer, 15 minutes later. All right, shall we leave it at that for today?
Let's do it.
I think that was a pretty intense session. Didn't expect it to be quite that intense, but it's, you know, it's always there because poor Sambo is on his final furlong, so we will have to let go of him soon. And I think that's what's coming up, the preemptive grief. But thank you, Amelia, for joining me again on this in this episode. I really appreciate your time and you sharing your experiences, because there will have been so much I hope that the listeners got. And if you were tuning into our session today, what was your main takeaway? I'd love to hear it in the comments section. And as Amelia mentioned before, you know, if you find out challenges that you're going through with, you know, adopting animals, or animals are bringing fears up for you, or some kind of thoughts of inadequacy or pain or whatever, and you want to talk about that, just reach out. desk@INFxProject.com if you feel like you need to speak to a mentor, and we'll put you in touch with somebody suitable. Thanks, Amelia. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Merja. This is always a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, for sure. I'm very grateful for your time and the energy that you're bringing into our work. So thank you for that. And we'll talk to you again soon in the next episode of these sometimes super serious, but more important than that, real conversations with INFJs and INFPs. We'll see you soon.